Okay, you're good to go.
Okay, welcome everybody to the meeting, particularly the folks who may be observing. Um, to start off, let's turn the time to Julie Anderson for thought and Pledge of Allegiance. Oops, unmute yourself.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. So when I was asked to do this, I was just going to do a prayer. I thought I can take the easy way out. I'm just going to do a prayer.
Okay.
And then I actually came across a quote in the school that I'm teaching at right now that really struck a chord with me. And so I decided I would share that. And bear with me because this is the actual quote that they have up. They change the quote every week for the kids, and it's also, it's just an idea to share with them. This one says, always leave people better than you found them. Hug the hurt, kiss the broken, befriend the lost, love the lonely. And I don't know what it was about this statement, but as I was reading it, it really struck me is, as a committee, how can we take this and apply it to what we're doing today when it's regarding the city? And so I thought about it and I came up with my version, but I would hope everybody else could come up with their own version of this particular saying that relates to them as a member committee. And this is what I came up with. This is just mine, but I wanted to share it with you. It says, always leave North Ogden City than when you started. Respect all citizens while respecting the past and giving hope to the future. And I think that's what our job is that we always respect the past, but that we give hope to the future of this city. So if you guys would be, if you would stand and do the pledge with me, I would appreciate it.
Good. No, go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. While we're here at the front end of the meeting, can we have a volunteer to share a prayer or a thought with us next meeting and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I can do it.
Okay,
I have so many thoughts.
Okay, I can do it. Is Meg?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's kind of you. We'll record that in the minutes and have you set aside to do it next meeting, and we'll look forward to that. Thank you very much. First item is to take a look at the minutes from October 28th. Steph informed me that this was the most productive meeting that the committee ever held. And it was really good. I wasn't there, so I appreciate.
That is not what I said.
Anyway, has everyone had a chance to look over the minutes, and are there any comments, additions, subtractions, or corrections?
This is John. I'll say that, Stephanie, and I'll also say that I motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the minutes as written. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Julie seconds. Are there any objections? If there's no objection, we'll consider the minutes approved. Move on to our next item on the agenda.
Grant, you need to have everyone do an I vote.
Oh, do we? Okay.
An I or an A, yeah.
Okay, I vote aye.
Just everybody do it the same. Aye.
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 Okay, very good. Okay, Don, welcome aboard. Okay, we're set then to move to the next item on our agenda, which is consideration and action on legislative determination regarding the future land use map for the downtown and Southtown districts.
Grant, did you want to do number 2 before you go to number 3?
Oh, I do. Public comments, you bet.
Okay, I have a hand. Will you please state your name and your address?
Yes, this is Shauna Flinders, and the address is 2679 North, 450 East. They're in North Ogden.
Great. Welcome, Shauna. We're excited to hear what you have to say.
Thank you. We have actually, myself, my couple of contractors have been speaking to your planning department, Robert Scott. And he informed us that the city council has requested that they don't do any more zone change requests until the general plan committee, or the steering committee, I assume, has, I guess, taken a look at this new area. I've actually been talking to him about putting some townhomes on a property. My dad just passed away in August, and it's a property that is directly across the street from the skate park, North Ogden Elementary School. And it's about a ½ acre. And we're actually asking to see if you guys might be willing to open that up for a zoning change. We think it would be a great upgrade to the area. My dad had a little problem keeping up that property for a while, and so it's a little dilapidated and run down. And we feel like it would be a real upgrade to the area. It'd be a great thing for young families. You know, it's adjacent actually to a multifamily apartment building that actually touches the property line.
Okay.
And we just feel like it would be a great transition from those apartments to townhomes into the single family homes up there.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent some pictures in. We actually, I don't even know that that's something that you guys need or not.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, Mr. Scott told us that we might want to join this meeting and see if you might be willing to just open that up for a rezoning in that area.
Okay, that would kind of take us to number 3 and 4 on the agenda. Rob, have you had a chance to look over the results of the October meeting and the general designation that was given to that area?
Yes. Yes.
And what Shauna is discussing seems to be in line with what that recommendation is, isn't it?
I believe it is.
Okay. One of the things on our agenda was number 4, and we were suggesting that the general plan designations that were outlined in October actually have our Councilman Barker take those to the City Council for approval, and have Dawn take those to the Planning Commission for approval. But I would think that whatever needs to be done to facilitate this from Ms. Flinders is something that we ought to be able to try to facilitate. It does sound like an upgrade. You're talking about the corner home there that's kind of just north of those apartments and west of the skate park area across the street.
Correct.
And
Yeah, sorry.
Can
Yep.
we get an actual address? Sorry,
Yeah.
just so I can.
And it's currently zoned.
RCC or Residential City Center.
So then you would want it rezoned to,
Well, we would like to put in a single, it's a little more than a ½ acre. We would like to put in a single, I guess, building, but it's actually 6 separate units. of townhomes, but they were, our plan is actually an upgraded version and kind of a, one that would actually really fit in well to that neighborhood. I actually grew up on that property, so I kind of have a little heartstring there. But I think it would be a great place for young families to be able to have walking distance to that elementary school.
Yeah.
So I think they said something about possibly a text amendment or an R3 or 4. But the property is big enough that I think that it, you know, would be best to have like a 6 unit from the measurements that we've done on it.
Okay. And I can't address the specifics. I just know that what you're talking about, Ms. Linders, correlates directly with the vision that this committee has for that whole area, which is basically combination of commercial, residential, and multifamily dwellings. And I would see no problem with that whatsoever coming from this committee. Ryan or John?
I don't see that as our position.
Okay.
I don't think we ought to be piecemealing this thing. I understand our position is that we want to present to them a general plan zoning map.
Right.
And then it's up to the planning commission on what they do with our recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we ought to be looking at piecemealing this and that and the other. I think the council's already doing that with the zoning map.
Mm-hmm.
Just personally, I don't think that's our position. We could consider that in our overall discussion tonight, but I'd like to see us get moving along and getting this map done to the planning commission so they can move forward on it.
Yep. Very good, John. Steph?
I agree with John, but I do also think that where we do have a map layout and we have an idea of what we want, I think it would be worth putting, I don't know if we can amend to add a small discussion at the end of this if we are all in agreement of simply saying, yes, we're okay with this, this project being presented. I think that's more what's being asked, not if we necessarily, I mean, we can look at it and if we think it feels and should be able to be presented while we continue with the work that we've done.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's something we could quickly discuss and vote to either move forward or say, no, we don't think this fits. We would like the hold on no zoning changes to stay as planned until we're finished.
Great, thank you.
I'm not sure that's what the council has said, that they don't want to make any changes until we give them a zoning map. They're not looking to us to tell them what they can do.
No, I agree. And I don't think we're necessarily telling them what to do, except for they've put it on hold to give us the chance to do that. But we've kind of got a basic layout. And I think we should just have a quick discussion and vote on if, let's let it go, this one go forward or no. But I don't think it would be our decision to make.
Right.
I don't know.
Let me double check with John and Rob.
Yeah, if John says it, I just think it would be worth having a quick little discussion and vote at the very end.
Well, and it seems to me that the zone designation that we're proposing at this point for that area, this would be a distinct possibility, and I see no problem passing that on to the Planning Commission of the City Council. That from our perspective, this particular project fits within the configuration. Now, John, doesn't this proposal fit within the discussion and the decision for that zoning area?
Yeah. Okay. I'm fine with saying if Ryan, as a representative through this committee, can go to the city council and say, I know we made this decision that we're not going to change any zoning. However, in all the discussions of this committee, this fits in what they're discussing.
Good. Okay.
That way, we're not telling them to change their order.
No.
And to me, that is part of Ryan's job being on the city council, is to go there and say, they're looking at this map, and so far, they're in agreement with what they're suggesting here.
Okay, John, could we take that in the form of a motion and then have discussion on the motion? Basically,
Do we need to finish public comments?
well, I
We're
don't.
kind of a mess, huh? We're all,
Yeah, we're kind of in that. Yeah,
And
I don't
Grant,
always know.
we probably
the
hold that
city-
till we get into the actual meeting. Go ahead, John.
Grant, this is John Call. So you technically, a committee cannot take action on any item that's not on the agenda.
Okay.
And so we could put it on a future agenda, or if the committee would like, we can pass that, Ryan can pass that information on to the council. Like as has been identified, you guys are recommending the future plan, and a recommendation, this type of recommendation doesn't need to be formalized.
Right. Okay, great.
But this just one word of caution is we want to be careful we're not undermining. The council responded with the moratorium, for lack of a better word,
Right.
based on this group's recommendation. And, you want to make sure that if you're sending a change or modification, that you're giving some clear reasons why you think it's appropriate.
Okay.
So that you're not then opening the door for everybody to ask for it. So, and I'm not saying whether this is good or bad. I'm just trying to say,
Oh, yeah.
let's be careful to make sure the council understands the goals still.
Okay, Ryan, would you feel comfortable taking the statement that John kind of summarized for us, which is this proposal fits within everything we've discussed about the development in this area, and just passing that opinion on?
Yeah.
Good.
It'll have to go to planning commission first,
Right.
but I mean,
Okay.
I'll take it to the council that this is what the general plan committee's feeling.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable weighing one way or the other right now, though.
No,
Getting
absolutely.
it brought up. So,
No.
but yeah,
No.
I mean, I don't mind say if the committee wants to do a straw poll and so say take it, then we'll do that.
My suggestion on this is that Ryan needs to go to the council and say, we have this moratorium. They're the ones that have to lift the moratorium.
Right.
And he can say, the council or the committee is looking at this, and so far what they're requesting fits in with what they're discussing.
Right.
But it's up to the council to lift their moratorium, and then they can discuss whether they want to move forward with it or not. It's not our position to tell them that.
Absolutely. So does anybody have an objection to asking Councilman Barker to take that sentiment to the city council and asking Dawn to take that to the planning commission, that basically the Flinders proposal fits within the framework that we're developing, and basically that just passing that on?
Hey, Grant.
Yeah.
Just one thing to be aware of. As of Friday, I am no longer on the planning commission.
Oh.
I thought I should mention that. My term was up and I did not apply for another term.
Well, thank you for your service, Don.
Don, I still wish you'd stay on this committee. Just my thoughts.
That's a possibility.
I echo those, John. Okay. Does anybody else on this committee sit on the planning commission also, other than Don?
Eric Thomas does.
Yeah, Eric is.
Eric is.
I think it might be good to recruit another person
Okay.
from the planning commission to be on this committee as well.
Okay. That's well taken. Okay, what can we, John, how do we pass this on then? Can we just send an email to the planning commission and to the city council that summarizes what John said?
I don't think this is a council moratorium that we're suggesting that they overlook. I think they're the ones that need to send it to the planning commission like they do any other zoning change.
Right, yeah. No, I don't send a recommendation one way or the other. The only thing we would send is this is within the parameters of what we view for that area. That's the only thing we're sending. We're not telling them to approve it, to disapprove it. All we're saying is this is in the parameters of what we vision for that particular area.
And that's why I think that's what Ryan needs to take to the city council. I think the moratorium needs to be lifted before they go ahead and look at anything.
Okay, I think that's fair. And
Question, I have a comment.
Steph.
I believe though, I think we're making this far too complicated. Sorry, I believe that they probably still have to make a formal request. Do we know if that's even happened? Because our moratorium doesn't mean that they can't do the formal request and get the ball rolling. It just means that the council has chosen not to vote any zoning changes. I say we just let them make the formal request and it start the regular process, and we continue on with our work. And when it gets to the point of needing to be rezoned, we go, we look at where we're at. We may be done by that point.
Yeah. Okay, so
I think they have to request it planning, and it can, once the ball gets rolling, it sounds like we have the cart way before the horse here. But as for the public comment, it fits in, as far as I can tell, to what we've been looking at. But they should make a formal request, and we'll go from there.
Well, and the only thing that I'd like to do is follow through on John's recommendation, which is we don't tell them what to do. We just say at this point, what's proposed fits within the parameters of what we've discussed for that area.
No, I agree, but I don't even know that there's actually been a proposal. I think it sounds like it's still an idea, which is great.
Right.
And so I think that we'll just let that happen.
Okay.
Yeah, I think she's gone to the council and requested it, and they're the ones that said, no, we've got a moratorium. So that's why I think if Ryan goes, gets
no, John, she hasn't been to council. It hasn't gone to the council or anything. It sounds like Rob Scott was simply suggesting.
No, but they told her they're not looking at anything because they're on a moratorium. So if they lift the moratorium, as Ryan can explain, then she can start the process.
Yeah, okay. I think we're all on the same page. We're caught up in semantics here, but the bottom line is we're not recommending one way or the other. All we're saying is this is within the parameters we're currently discussing, and leave it at that. And the council can lift the moratorium or not lift it, approve it or not approve it. But it does fit within the parameters. Are there any other elements of public discussion to pass on? Ms. Linders, does that give you some direction?
Yes, I appreciate you, just what you've done. Like I said, it was just a suggestion that we attend this meeting, and we have actually got what we wanted. We just wanted to know if that fits into the to the city view, that you were planning to do. Yeah. And we just didn't want to put a lot of money into it until we had a general idea.
Okay.
So we appreciate you taking a look at it.
Very good. That, yeah, I know the property, and it's too bad about your father passing away. I actually had a chance to visit with him in the fall a little bit, and he was not doing well. So, I feel bad for that, and you have our sympathy. Are there any other public comments? Okay, seeing no other public comments, let's close that down and move to item 3 on the agenda. Consideration and action on legislative determination regarding the future land use map for the downtown and Southtown district. Ryan, did you have a question or no? Okay.
Nope, sorry, I was just clearing my throat.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Rob, your ball's in your court.
Okay, well, this item is a direct result of my contacts with the Flinders. And I've actually had contacts with other property owners, namely, oh, come on, the sorry, that's not me.
Okay.
So the property that's on 2000 that Bullfrog Spas owns, Sean Maynard. I've had a communication with him as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we've been wrapping up the discussion about the zoning down further south with respect to Cooperstown. So trying to at least look at options and what have you.
Okay.
I know that you've got an overall charge to put together an overall discussion, but as I chatted with these various people, it seemed to me that the existing general plan was consistent with what your draft plan shows.
Yeah.
And so if you don't want to follow through with any type of piecemeal thing, then maybe what I'm suggesting is moot. But the thought was, if you've had a chance to read my memo on that,
right,
it's basically saying that that properties, the Maynards, and I didn't have a chance to really talk about the cannery and what have you, but
mm-hmm,
those zones and what have you, when you look at what's in place and you look at the suggested map that you come up, your draft map, and the existing general plan, they seem to be compatible with one another. And so I don't know if you want to finish your discussion before you make an overall recommendation to the council, or if you would be willing to at least look at the
okay,
compatibility between the draft map and the downtown and Southtown areas.
okay.
From my perspective,
Yeah,
they seem to be compatible.
right. Robin, I think John and everyone has pointed out that they are. Lynn, if you can take us back to the agenda, I think this may help us in ordering one of the items on our agenda here, which is the proposed general plan map. And basically, item number 4 and item number 7 are both going to tie in to this discussion. Number 4, Steph and I have visited, and what we'd like to suggest is that Councilman Barker take the proposed general plan map with the basic zones outlined to the city council at this point in time and let them know this is where we're at and these are the recommendations. And I think that's probably a good idea because it'll give them a concept of the general direction for each of the areas. And then item number 7 really fits in with that, which is developing the specifics for each area. And when we get to number 7, or if we want to reorder the agenda to move to that next, we may want to put these 2 areas top of the list. The other decision we'd have to make is whether or not, once we finish with an area, we want to turn that over to the city council for each of those particular zones and in each of those areas, or do we want to wait till the whole thing's done and turn it over in one fell swoop? So it seems to me that we have a couple elements here. First is whether we're ready to have Councilman Barker take the October plan outline to the city council. Steph.
Yeah, I think I think that's a great idea, but I would like to hear from the council first, because that map was kind of drawn up after our last meeting, and I was hoping that everyone had a chance to look over it. And I think that we should all come to an agreement that that's kind of a basic layout and that we're going to move forward based on that map.
Okay.
And then once we agree on that point, I think that's a good place for Ryan to report, because we've all come to an agreement, and then we can start fine tuning that map, but we'll have at least all agreed that that is what we discussed, how we see the basic layout, and that's what we're going to move forward on.
Can you, Lynn, can you pop that map up for us that was the result of the last meeting so we can discuss that? I was under the impression that the committee had actually approved that at this point. So.
Yeah. You know, what Stephanie just outlined is where I thought we were. Okay. And, you know, it was presented and then she asked us to look at that, and I've done it. And I was in agreement pretty much with it then, and I don't have any suggested changes, but I think that's where we were in the discussion, is each of us were supposed to do that.
Right. Well, and I looked it over, and with the exception of maybe adding a little more in conservation districts, but that would come under the specific discussion for each of the zones. I had no suggestions or additions. What about other committee members? Do we have any additional suggestions, or are we ready to approve this as a basic concept moving forward?
Grant, this is Mark.
Yes.
There is several parks that are in the long range plan.
Right.
For the trails and parks. That area just to the west of Nebo Avenue, they're looking at 2 parks for up in that area to.
Now, where is Nebo Avenue? Isn't that down in a county down south somewhere? Or?
Yes, it is, but there's a Nebo Avenue on the plan up there as well.
Oh.
Up at the top, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
There's 2 parks planned for that area.
Okay.
I'm going to have to drop off for an emergency. I'll come back in just a few minutes.
Okay. So we would want to probably add those parks in.
My question is, that's zoned for low density.
Right.
And does the general plan put specific areas for parks, or do we allow that for the Parks Committee to say this is where we're going to put them?
I can give you some background on that if you'd like.
Thank you, Rob.
Sure. If you look at our overall land use map, it identifies the existing parks. And in the section that talks about parks, it talks about the need for some additional parks in certain locales, one of those being up on the bench.
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is the general plans say where parks are going to be, or when the council and the planning commission look at it, then they're the ones, you know, okay, there's a park in this community, but where does it go?
That's a good question, John. Rob, could you answer that question, and then we'll go to Steph?
Yeah, on the general plan map, on the land use map, it identifies parks.
Okay. And the parks that, the parks that were just being discussed, are they on there or not? Mark Brown was just discussing up by Nebo Avenue.
Right. That's the general plan identifies that there is a need for some type of park up in that area, but not a specific location has been identified.
Specific location. Okay.
Right.
Super. Well, I think then, John, your point's really well taken, which is at this point, that doesn't sound like anything we need to address other than re-emphasize the fact that there ought to be some park space up there. So that sounds good. Okay. Other comments?
I had a comment, Grant.
Oh, wait. Now who's I?
This is Meg.
Oh, hi, Meg.
I just had a question about with the green, the conservation area
Mhm.
versus what's not annexed into the city. What I mean is Randy Marriott, has made moves to have that changed and possibly having commercial up there. And I know that's not in the city, but I wondered how that fit into the map that we have here, considering that is something that's currently on the table.
Hey, Meg, this is Ryan. The commercial is not going to be happening. The council's already told him it's not coming.
Okay.
I'd like to hear Steph's comments.
I would too. Steph?
Hi, thanks. Sorry. I think it's awesome that they're looking at parks up there. I think that there are no formal proposals yet for anything up there that I know of, and I know the annexation needs to come into play. So I think that it's really important that we stay focused on what we as a committee see the conservation area or conservation zone to look like, because the sooner we get that dialed in and passed on, as those projects are presented and it's zoned on our map as conservation area and it's all defined, that's going to help kind of to understand what we want up there and if what is being proposed fits.
Right.
I love that, Steph. I love that.
I say, let's not worry about what's coming, what's been talked about. Let's look at it, and we as a council or as a committee decide what we want that to look like. If it was, let's pretend it's part of the city. I mean, we just need to say, okay, this is what we can imagine this looking like in 20 years, and this would really serve the city and our community best.
Okay.
And so I think we just need to stay focused on conservation and really getting that dialed in, because, the sooner we get that done, the better it's going to be when those are presented.
Okay.
Grant, this is Mark. I apologize. I took care of that. And I just got back in on talking about the parks. The city and the Parks and Recreation has a master plan for areas of density, and there is the city, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong. I know Tiffany brought this up several months ago and we haven't been able to meet, but that they show areas north of 3100 where the new area of building is going, a park up there and a park closer to the mountain that will serve that population. So there's plans to build 2 parks up there as population increases. And I don't know if that answers the question that we were involved, that was being asked about at the time that I had to leave.
Right, yeah. No, I think at this point, the specifics of those will be left to the Parks Committee and City Council and so on to hammer out. Steph, I think, is bringing us back to the agenda, which is we really do need to define conservation area.
Okay, I didn't hear that, so.
Yeah, let's finish. Julie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, I think we just need to concentrate on this map that we created and decide if we're okay with this, or if there is, at some point we can approve this. And then as we go into the zone by zone, then we can make whatever changes, because we could talk all night about this. And I think what we need to do at this point is just get everybody's opinions and their vote on how we feel about this map.
Okay, as chair, let me ask this question. Does anyone on the committee have any additional suggestions, changes, criticisms, subtractions from this particular map that's in front of us right now? Okay, then the chair would entertain a motion.
Hey, Grant, this is Ryan, real quick. Sorry. I got just one item that I'm kind of been thinking about. With our conservation easement, we're doing that as a transfer of development rights. Am I correct?
I believe that's the only tool available right now, but that's a council decision.
The only issue I have is the area to be transferred to is pretty much built out.
Uh-huh.
And so we got such a great big area of where we want to put these conservation easements. We just don't have an area where we can transfer them to.
Okay. Well, that's probably something that as a committee we need to discuss, because unfortunately, Ryan, what you're talking about is reality. And, I wish we had more tools to deal
Yeah.
with, other than just that transfer process. There are other tools that would be available, but I don't see them being proposed in our current legislature. So maybe there's some things that we can work with that give us some other alternatives other than that transfer of development rights. But that's not as subtle of a tool as we may need. Anyway, back to the question. That'll also fit into what Steph has mentioned, which is the definition of conservation area. So that fits in there also. Once again, are there any changes to this general map at this point, recognizing that the specificity is going to need to be outlined zone by zone? Mark, is that your hand?
No, I was increasing the map. There was one area that I wanted to look at.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Brent, this is Evan Nelson.
Hi, Evan.
Hi. I may have missed a discussion on this, but I was just curious about North Ogden Plaza. If I'm reading the map right, it looks like North Ogden Plaza would kind of be divided between commercial and low density residential. Is that, am I looking at that right?
When you're talking
No,
about, go ahead, Steph.
I see that as commercial and high density, the North Ogden Plaza.
You're talking
I thought we
about,
had that as, we had commercial, up to like, let's see, where are you talking about, Evan?
So maybe, yeah, I guess that pink area is low density, but it's transferable to high density. So I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, we were thinking that would be our area that we could offer as a possible transferable area. That we would start with zoning it lower, but we knew that those areas were designated as possible transferable for higher density.
right.
So where that dividing line is, I'm just curious, we have some, that existing strip mall. Is that strip mall supposed to be in the commercial part of it?
It's on Washington Boulevard, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got commercial running right down Washington on both sides.
Right.
And then kind of moving from commercial to high density with a little bit of mixed use in some areas, and then slowly working its way, to lessen kind of a gradual off of Washington out, I think is how we all saw it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of the reason for that question is just the past discussions that have been held related to that plaza and the possibility of some RDA investment into that area.
Mm-hmm.
And just wanted to make sure we don't limit our options on being able to use that money in the future. So
That's a good point, Evan. Thank you. I think at this point, when we get to that specific area and come up with a detailed map, we probably need to address that question. In the meantime, are there any specific suggestions, changes to this proposal, recognizing that it's general, and that anybody on the committee would like to suggest? Okay, seeing none, do we need to make a formal motion, John, to ask Ryan to take this to the city council, to give them a feel for where we're at and what we have outlined?
No, I think Ryan can take this as kind of information on where the committee's moving.
Okay, seeing no objection, Ryan, if you would not mind taking this to the city council.
Sure.
These are the general parameters that we'll get down to specifics. That would be we would appreciate that. Okay, next item on our agenda. Let's see if Wynn can pop that up for us. The moderate housing report. This is just an overview. What John's going to talk about it is something we need to have put together by the end of the year, and we don't want to forget that it's a required report that we need to have ready and be addressed. John, if you could deal with that now.
Yeah. So as many of you remember, the first task that this group did almost 18 months ago was develop a moderate income housing report. We have to update it every 2 years. And by update, that doesn't mean we have to recreate it, but it means we need to review it and look at our goals, look at what we've accomplished, and just kind of do a check-in, so to speak. So I just wanted to have this is kind of a reminder that it's on the radar again this year. We probably need to have it done here in the next, I would say 7 months. I know that sounds like a long time, but as we all know, that goes pretty quick.
Right.
And one thing that I had talked about with Grant and Steph was the idea of maybe putting together a small subcommittee that can, maybe 2 or 3 members who can focus on doing the bulk of the work and then coming back and presenting to this group in 3 months, kind of some progress, and then a final plan in maybe 3 months after that, for the group to review and discuss and refine before it's presented to the Planning Commission and Council. So
Okay.
that was what I was thinking, and was going to recommend based on conversations with Steph and Grant. So.
Okay.
And I would be happy to take that up.
Okay. I had Lynn attach some information on moderate income housing from the Utah Foundation, some research that I thought was pretty interesting to look over. I guess at this point, the chair to entertain a motion for creation of a subcommittee to examine this carefully, the issue of moderate income, low income housing, and have the subcommittee report back to the general committee. Steph has volunteered to serve on that committee. Do we have any other volunteers who would like to be involved with that? Julie, okay. We probably need a couple others. Who knows what Steph and Julie will cook up, right? So
If nobody volunteers, I'm going to come find y'all. I'm going to find some myself, but no.
Okay.
We can start with Julie and I for now.
Okay,
and
John.
We'll go from there.
In terms of staff support for this subcommittee, you'll provide the staff support, or will Rob?
It will be me and planning department.
Okay, very good.
There'll probably be 2 staff members, just not sure who the other one would be.
Yeah. No problem. Okay, very good. Okay, then at this point, we probably need a motion to appoint Julie and Steph to that subcommittee, and with members to be added. If that's okay, entertain a motion to that effect, that subcommittee to deal with moderate income housing be created with Julie and Steph assigned, and they are empowered to secure other participants. Anybody want to make that motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mark, a second. Second from John. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, that was an aye. Okay. Any opposed? Great. Okay, it passes unanimously then. Okay, thank you very much. Steph and Julie, I'll be happy to be involved in that also. Okay. Conservation area. This is something that is kind of a knotty discussion, not in terms of being bad, but in terms of being somewhat complex. There are all kinds of definitions as to what a conservation area means, what it entails, and the vision. Everything from wilderness, we're not going to mess or touch it in any way. It's left for the animals to roam, all the way down to some specific restrictions. We've created quite a bit of area that is defined as conservation area in our proposal that Ryan's taking to the city council. So we probably need to define what we mean by that. That states the problem. Do we have any suggestions or ready? Okay, Steph.
Well, so we do not at the moment have a conservation zone in our zoning, do we, John? We jump on,
No.
John?
We don't have a definition. There is one in the general plan that generally talks about conservation, but not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, I guess my idea would be, let's just see, I don't want, without giving a definition, I want to hear what people imagine that because that could be anything from here to here. So I'm curious to know where everybody when we talk about it, what they see that being, and then we can start closing the gap in on something.
Okay, Julie.
So for me, where I see most probably your biggest conservation area is most probably the piece on the east side up by the Posse Arena, because we're not going to be able to build on that. So that is a definite conservation area that we have within the city. I mean, some of it is in the county. And if you take it all the way down, I see that as one area where, our wildlife is there. I mean, I don't know if anybody noticed the mountain lion that people have been talking about. He's coming down a lot lower, but and then anything to the north, I think we need to protect everything above the power lines. That's just my feelings, is everything above the power lines needs to be defined as a conservation area. And I think we need to define how many homes we like to see up there. Is it going to be, are we going to allow some like duplexes? Do we just want to make it all low density? I think we need that area needs to be very much defined by this committee as to how we do that.
Yeah, I think that any definition we come up with would apply to anything we've outlined as green on our map, because we as a committee counted that as conservation zone.
Which brings us back to the issue.
So yeah, so let's
how we're going to define conservation zone, which is what we're discussing now. Don, do you have any input from the Planning Commission side as to what a conservation zone definition ought to be or to look like?
No, I've kind of struggled with it a little bit too. Conservation zone is, we know anything above a 30% slope is undevelopable by definition. You can't build on it. It's done. So that takes a lot of those areas off the table. Beyond that, there really hasn't been much done to make it, to define, you know, a conservation area, conservation zone. That really hasn't been a discussion that's come up on the Planning Commission.
Okay. Mark, from your perspective on trails and parks and so on, do you folks have a good working definition of what a conservation area is?
I can't give you an answer on that, Grant. I would have to.
Okay.
I could look and find out tomorrow and then report back to you.
Okay. Appreciate that. John Arrington.
Yeah. You know, I don't have, like most of you, I don't have any idea what should be in there. Can Rob or somebody on the staff give us some guidelines on what we're looking to propose?
I guess Rob and John, a good starting place would be the current definition.
Yeah.
Could
Can I say something?
Sure. Go ahead, Steph.
So I don't know that I want them necessarily to give us a definition yet. This is for us to discuss what we imagine it. I don't, you know, like, because there isn't one that exists, we do have the hillside protection zones. And there's a section in there that I particularly agree with, that I would be happy to read. But I just, when you guys look up there, what do you see that as? Do you see homes? And if so, how many can we imagine apartments? Can we not? Can we imagine sparsely scattered homes, or do we imagine the clustering of homes? You know, I think this is completely up to us to start defining that based on how we see it. But do you mind, Grant, if I read a little bit from the hill protection zone that is
please do.
That I like it's under the purpose and to meet these objectives, it is necessary during.
Let me put you on hold for just a half a second. I think we also ought to hear the definition that's currently on the books too.
I don't think we have one, do we? That's why I asked John.
I think Rob and John were mentioning that there's one somewhere in the general plan. Isn't that the case? If Rob and John could kind of take a look at that while Steph is presenting some of her thoughts.
I think we've referenced one, but I could not find one when I was looking, but this is the closest that I could find that I think that I thought was a really great starting point. To meet the objectives, it is necessary during planning and implementation of development activities to give consideration to the following: 1, conservation of the natural environmental function of the site; 2, compatibility with the surrounding land; 3, stabilization of hillside slopes or other areas subject to erosion or mass movement; and 4, preserve the natural capacity of drainage courses and protection of natural drainage ways. And, you know, this area is already zoned the hillside protection, so I think that will apply as things that will work well in the conservation area. I really think our biggest thing to tackle is development.
Well, I think we need to expand that definition to include wildlife and so on also. That's talking about physical characteristics by and large. And I think we want to do what we can to maintain existing habitats in those conservation areas.
I agree 100%.
What about the density issue? There are a number of models across the country on this that I've been able to dig out. And one of the models is to scatter very few residences throughout an area and kind of leave it by and large undeveloped. And the folks who own that property and so on agree when they build the residence not to develop it. One of the other concepts are clusters of highly dense homes in an area and kind of surrounded by the conservation area. I read an interesting article about Amsterdam and the movement that they're making over in the Netherlands to create that kind of a concept, where basically they're going to have pockets of high density, but it'll be pretty much surrounded by natural features that are left as natural as they can in that area. Guess lots of tulips, I'm not sure what else. So there are a number of ways to approach this. And I think it's probably what would we like to see? Would you like to see scattered homes? Would you like to see a couple concentrated high density developments in that area? Or do we want to just have the whole thing stay green, in which case that is going to mean some trade-offs and other things. Julie?
Just a quick question. So this that we're talking about right now, is Ryan going to be taking this also to the city council at the same time
No.
that he presents? No.
No.
How much time do we have to come up with this concept? Because I mean, conservation is different in everybody's eyes.
Right.
And what they feel, and so I'm thinking what we need to, I don't know if we can like talk about this and say, okay, if everybody maybe could share their idea of how they see what we consider our conservation areas through an email to all the committee members.
Okay.
And then maybe our next meeting, we can go through those and define, how we see it. For me, I would see it different than most, probably Steph or even Mark. And so we could talk all night about what we want to see. I never really come to any conclusions. And I think it would most probably good if we did at least take maybe, the next month to really look at conservation areas throughout the world and throughout Utah and get an idea of how other cities are doing it and how we can apply maybe some of those to our own city.
Okay.
Just my thought.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Other thoughts from committee?
I like that. I think we should still have a little bit of a discussion. But I think that we're far from being able to dial it in. But I think maybe we should at least narrow the scope a little bit to, let's look at how we see residential on conservation, because I'm getting the feel from everyone that we chose that because we would like to keep it as natural as possible, like as natural.
And I would say on the heels of that, I'm a little bit disenfranchised or disillusioned by the idea of a conservation area, because the last time I kind of came face to face with that was the changes done on Loman View. And if you recall, that swath of land behind Loman View and such was initially supposed to be a conservation area, and then that isn't working anymore. So I guess my question about a conservation area, not only what it looks like, but how willing are we to protect it? How willing are we? Is that something that's written up over the conservation area?
Grant, sorry, I don't mean to keep going, Grant. I'm sorry. My thought on that, Meg, is as far as what I understand is we are working towards, help me with that word, the word of vesting the general plan.
Right.
And so once we do that, to get a zoning change becomes very difficult. Like that's, by vesting it, we're kind of almost setting it in stone, which is why we're saying, how can we see this in 20 years?
Right.
And
is
so
vesting
that's
it
my
for
understanding.
20 years, or is it like 5 years and then we revisit, and then 10 years we revisit? I mean,
I don't know, John, what does that mean? Because I don't think this is a conservation easement. We're talking a conservation zone.
Yeah, so it's a conservation zone is what we're talking about. And then as far as when things are reviewed, it really is, amending the general plan is a very sophisticated process, which requires multiple hearings and time. So you have to give it notice so many months in advance, and it just makes it more difficult than just a simple zone change. And so that's kind of the goal. But you're right, it's a conservation zone as opposed to an easement.
Okay, John and Rob, were you able to find that definition?
I don't know that I have not been able to find a specific definition. John might be able to, but in the section that deals with the Coldwater neighborhood, it gives some suggestions or strategies to look at. So they're very broad statements.
Okay.
That relate to everything from transfer of development rights, purchase of development rights, promoting clustering. That's one thing we don't have. We don't have a clustering ordinance right now.
Right.
Seek nonprofit organizations and individuals to be a partner. Consider providing resources to assist agricultural landowners in estate planning if they want to preserve the agricultural nature of their homesteads. So there's a lot of potential activities it could take, which are outside the realm of the zoning ordinance per se.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Would you mind emailing kind of that Coldwater information out to all the committee members?
You bet. We'll be happy to do that.
Thank you so much. Okay, there's been a suggestion. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just have a question. So on this map, all the green area is within city limits, right?
Not currently.
No.
The area right above Nebo is not currently annexed into the city. So kind of if you look at the outskirts of Nebo Avenue.
So if we give a definition of a conservation area that's not in the city, does that mean when it comes in, or if it comes in, that would apply?
It provides some direction to the council and planning commission as they assign a zone when it's annexed into the city.
Okay, so our definition of a conservation area would help them in that decision.
Yes, it's meant to guide that decision.
So what we come up with isn't necessarily going to happen in some areas that are shown as green.
There is that potential that it won't happen in some areas, correct?
Okay, I just wanted to make sure what area we're dealing with.
Good, we're good. Okay, there's been discussion and suggestion that we maybe take a month for each of us to share information. I'll be happy to share some resources that I've come up with on conservation areas, zones, etc., with each other, and then have us submit suggestions for discussion in our next meeting. Do we want to, as a committee, does anyone want to put that in the form of a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
With the suggestion, really, that everybody that comes up with somebody shares it with us during the month.
Right, and not just the week before the meeting. Very good. Okay. Comments or discussion on the second on the motion?
I'll second it,
Thank
but can
you.
I make a comment?
Sure.
Can we, Lynn, would it be okay if we included you in those emails so that everything goes, to one specific person, that maybe can gather everything together? If that's okay with you, I'd be more than happy to help you with that. But if we could do that, I think that would really help make sure nothing gets lost, because sometimes my emails are crazy.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Excellent. And I think John's motion is an excellent motion. I would emphasize that we probably need to get on this quickly rather than waiting till the last minute. This is a serious discussion. This is a serious issue. It's a major part of what we're looking at. And so let's all share our ideas with each other and get them out on the table so that we're prepared to discuss them in the next meeting and maybe come up with a definition. Steph, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I would just say, I think that in talking about it, that we all come to the next meeting prepared in the mindset that we are going to define it down and make it finish with a motion with some clear definitions. Otherwise, we're just going to keep dragging on. So if we can come back with the idea of how we want, how much building, what that looks like to us with some real specifics that we can share, I think that will help us get down to some definitions that we can vote on and move forward in.
Okay.
Because we still have all those other zones.
Right. No, absolutely. Okay. So the motion's on the table. John's motion, seconded by Julie. Any other comment or discussion about the motion? If not, let's just move to question if there's no objection. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Great. Thank you very much, John. Julie. Okay. This will be a fun discussion. Let's share information with each other about what the options are for the conservation areas. Okay. Review the map zone by zone. I think what we've talked about here is making the conservation zone the first area that we review. If that's okay with everyone, I'd like to suggest that the next area that we review for specifics would be probably the high density areas. Now, are we going to review it by location, like Northtown, like Southtown, and central area, etc., or are we going to review this just red areas, yellow areas, blue areas, pink areas? How do we want to approach this review? How do we vision?
I think, Grant, from my understanding is we would just be defining what high density looks like to us.
Okay.
Instead of taking it by sections, because I don't know that I think at the moment.
Okay.
I mean, I know that we did that through Bicentennial Park, and I think that was awesome, and we've got that marked out as a park. But I think that first I mean, sorry, I feel like I'm railroading you a little, and that is so not my intentions. I'm sorry. I believe we need to just be defining.
What you're suggesting is we look at it by color, basically.
And defining those zones.
Right.
So, and then we can continue to zone in, then once all the zones are defined, we can start taking each zone and breaking it down even smaller and smaller and smaller.
Well, my suggestion would be, Julie, go ahead. Julie.
Sorry, this was just a thought that just came into my head. For this, stepping back just a minute, for this conservation zone that we're talking about, what it looks like, do we need to include the area that would be considered the transferable option? Because they are related. And so at the next meeting, should we include that? Or is that something that we should also be looking at a little closer? Just the thought that went through my head as I'm sat here.
Well, I think
because it does relate.
Right. Agreed. And I think the pink areas there, low density with transfer option to higher density, are already outlined in the zones on the map that we have. So I believe that we'll be addressing those as we go through. I guess my question is, do we need to, what do we need to look at next after conservation?
I thought your idea of high density was great. I just was suggesting we look at high density and define high density as a whole.
Right.
But based on Julie's comment, maybe we do high density plus the transferable together on the heels of conservation, you know, kind of as the next zones we tackle.
Okay. Super. I think that's fine. We've got our next meeting pretty much outlined then. That'll be the first thing that we focus on. Now, part of this conservation discussion, I think if anybody has some specific areas that they would like to carve out as a conservation area, that we probably ought to be able to do that in the next meeting also. And one of my feelings is that the Barker Park area ought to be carved out as a conservation area. We do what we can to preserve that, along with the waterways that we have, as many open ones as we currently have. I'd like to see us address those, because even though they're not in the green area, they are things that I think what we'd call conservation mini areas. And so in the next meeting, if people have specific suggestions about kind of sub-conservation areas that maybe even show up in the middle of a high density area, let's get those identified and on the plan. That will be one of the things that I'll do in the information I share with the committee. And I would encourage others to think about that also. Okay. Other comments on this item on the agenda? Okay, then we'll plan to deal with conservation first and then move to high density next. Okay, do we have other issues that we need to deal with this evening back on the agenda? I think we...
Can I ask a question really quick?
Sure.
Sorry, I jumped in late to the meeting. I apologize. But so maybe you've already answered this, but as we're talking about conservation, has anyone specifically compared our proposed plan next to, I tried to print it out, but I couldn't get it just now, but on the general plan, the existing general plan, there was a page that was all the future the future parks and current parks and trails.
Right.
And so if we compare those two maps, are there some areas that we need to put on the conservation, areas that are future parks, we can't forget about those areas, or future trails,
Right.
Let's not miss out on those. It's just the thought that I had.
That's precisely the point I was just making, because right now we have this green band, but I think if we have specifics within each of these other areas that we want to identify as conservation areas, we should. And I think if we're going to maintain the nature of the community, we need to do as much as we can to maintain some of those special areas and call them conservation areas and approach them from that perspective. So Christina, that's an excellent point. And looking at the general plan as currently existing is a good source to find some of those.
I wonder if we need to get the Parks and Trails Committee officially to stamp approval on what we do as we go through this process.
I think that we could have them give us input. Mark, what's your feeling on that? I'd rather than having them approve a final thing, I'd rather hear their ideas, frankly, next meeting.
we could present in the next meeting. Again, the definition of what we consider a conservation area it depends, depending on who you talk to, conservation green space is what some people would say a conservation area. And so those would be the parks that we're talking about. Other people would consider a untouched, area that you could walk through without, just man-made paths.
Yeah.
So it just, so that is a difficult area to determine. So I will give you what we perceive it to be, but there may be others on the committee that would consider a conservation area totally different than what our perception would be.
Right.
So I will come prepared to our next meeting to discuss that.
Okay. Can you share that information with us before, Mark?
I could.
That would be helpful.
But that would be based on our definition.
Right.
And others, like I said, would have their definition, because
right.
I'll just take, for example, the Southern Alliance, some of their ideas, untouched, nothing goes in there.
Right.
And it just depends. You have mixed use in a conservation area to absolutely nothing. So we have to come to a balance of how we would handle that.
Very good. I see Steph's hand. Steph?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that on the map that we are looking at, it does have the parks in there. It has the existing parks and the future, because we do have a map in the general plan that has the parks and the future parks in it.
Right.
And I was trying to see if there is a park definition. I don't know that we have definitions, and I'm guessing that's what Mark will do. Because I'm guessing those are their own zone. Like those are kind of void of the zones that we're talking about that they're in.
Yes.
So they kind of have their own, well, actually they would eventually get a zone now. Come on, it's just, it's new.
Civic.
What? Yeah, the civic zone. They would become civic zones.
Right.
So they would fall under those, under the definition that the civic zone gives to those.
Okay.
Areas.
Yeah, I think definitely identifying areas that we think are important is good. And I believe that those would actually be protected as any kind of development agreements or things come to light moving forward.
Right.
I imagine us almost being able to come up with outside of the zones and specific zone definitions, maybe some kind of city, some kind of a commitment to areas that we'd like to see kept, somewhat conserved and natural, and how we intend to do that, how we could do that. I don't know. I think that would be something great to add to the general plan. I've been kind of scanning it to see if I could find one now. I'm sure something along those lines exists in it, but it's big.
It is.
Other comments? Okay. How many members of the committee have been through Wadman Park, that's just west and north of the fire
Park
there? Wadman Park over in Pleasant View.
Oh, Wadman Park?
Wadman Park in Pleasant View. That's a pretty neat model. And it has trails through it, but they've maintained a whole lot of it pretty much pristine for observation. And the couple times I've been over and gone through that, there's a variety of wildlife and all kinds of things coming and going in that area. For John, you've been through that. What's your impression of that as maybe a model of conservation area?
Yeah, I think that's a good good spot and a good example of that. My question on this whole discussion is, if we designate something as a conservation area, does that mean that it would either have to be donated or purchased as a government-owned spot?
Well, I think it depends on where we designate them.
I mean, you know, if you designate this is going to be a conservation area, you know, I think we need to have some consideration to the owner of the property.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I know when they do developments, a lot of times they require, you know, parks to be developed. And so I'm just saying, when we designate an area, we probably need to consider who's going to own it and maintain it.
Right. Good point. Good point. Next meeting will be quite an interesting discussion, I believe. Okay. Are there any other comments from committee members regarding what we've covered this meeting and where we're headed next meeting? Suggestions? I'd like to commend everybody. This stuff is not easy to deal with, and everybody brings really important perspectives to help us consider the full range. It's not a cookie cutter, simple approach to life. And I really appreciate members of the committee digging in and taking a look at things from different perspectives. It's fun to watch. It's not the most orderly process under the heavens, but it's fun to watch, and it's fun to be part of. I thank all of you for your contributions this evening, and look forward to your suggestions about the conservation areas as we move ahead. If there are no other comments, I think we have marching orders, and we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Unless people want to just hang around and chat.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Thank you. It's been a fun meeting. Pleasure being with you. We'll visit with you hopefully before next month on ideas about conservation areas and so on. Thanks to all of you. Good evening.